first is the question that we ask this morning. And many would want to know exactly, many would say, how is it affecting Kenya? Why should we care about it? Perhaps Hashi is here to make sure that that happens. Hashi, Ramadan Kareem wa Sawm Maqbool.
Ramadan Kareem Sawm Maqbool. I'm glad, I'm here.
Yes.
I have a lot of fun here. I just didn't see Ndu. Ndu is not around, is she?
Ndu is not around.
I have to talk about Ndu while she's not around. I don't talk about her. I probably going to invite me.
Yeah.
So Ndu, we wish you, if you're fasting, a happy Ramadan. If you're not feeling well, we wish you well. And we hope that you're back, and I'm sure that the general here is going to take care of things while you're away. Gentlemen, asanteni kwa kunialika.
Karibu sana. So today I want us to go to Chad, eh?
Yes.
And one of Africa's largest countries, the fifth largest in Africa, located in North Central Africa and bordered by Libya, Sudan, Central African Republic, Cameroon, Nigeria, Niger. Eh?
Yeah.
And the proverb that we get from the people of Chad, a goat that belongs to many people dies of hunger.
A goat that belongs to many people
Dies of hunger.
dies of hunger.
Yes.
Do you know those people there are warriors, by the way? Did you know that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Chad. It's made up of people from my community. And you can see that their sayings are about goats,
Yes.
like us. We also have, I think we have the same saying about goats. Which means that if there's a lot of people chasing after this one goat, probably the goat is not going to find grass and, kind of patience and silence and time out to just graze. Because, most of the time, the goat just spends its time grazing. And if there's too many herders, what happens? It's going to be all over the place. Alafu haitakula kitu yote, si ndio? Bas, mi naona hivyo.
Yeah, it's been well interpreted, well said. But Ashi, let's look at the situation in the Middle East, right?
Yeah.
And it is the 10th day since the war broke out. And one asks the question, first of all, Israel, Iran, US, that war, was it necessary?
Well, first of all, I think our response should be a response of Africans, as Africans, And for us to respond, we have to look at our history.
Yes.
And in that way, find a way to respond. Because I think there's amnesia about our history. People forget where these countries in Africa came from, what happened to them, and why they're here today. And I think that what is happening in the Middle East is not a wake-up call. It's a way of saying, you have not been smelling the coffee for a long time, so we're going to smell it now. I think that it's unprecedented since the Second World War for a country to be attacked by the superpower, the United States, and its state, its client state. There's a debate about whether the United States is the client state or Israel is this client state. But in my view, you have to look at it from a point of view of a hegemon. A hegemon is described as a power that has military, economic, social, political, and crucially cultural power. I don't think Israel has economic, might have some military power. It definitely doesn't have any cultural power. We don't speak Yiddish.
Social.
And it doesn't have, its faith is not global. And it's a country of 6 million people.
Nairobi.
So I don't see it as a client, the United States being a client of the state of Israel. But there's no question in my mind the tremendous influence that the state of Israel has over U.S. policy is unprecedented. I mean, that one is there for everybody to see. So I think that a combination of the political and cultural and social influence that the Israeli state has over the U.S. government makes it a hegemon, but in the region. So it makes him a hegemon in the region of the Middle East. And the United States has material and political interests in the Middle East. The very founding of the State of Israel was based on the ability of the United States to project power in the Middle East, because the oil fields became the liquid in which the engines of the world were running. So I think that maybe we should be able to look at it from the point of view of what a hegemon is, and then we can begin to understand what is happening. Now, on the other side, there is the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Yes.
The Islamic Republic of Iran is an ancient culture. It used to be called Persia.
Persia, yes.
So, you know, it's about 2,500 to 3,000 years old. When everybody was eating raw meat and living up the tree, the Persians were charting the stars.
Yeah.
And they had civilization, they were writing, they had books, they had libraries. So, on the one side, the modern hegemon with its partner, the Israelis, on the one side, and the Israeli state was contesting to be the absolute hegemon of the Middle East. And the only person who has rejected that is the Islamic Republic of Iran. They have said no. And so the United States and Israel have decided that they were going to use military force to bring them to the heel. For an example, Saudi Arabia and all the Gulf countries, many of them recognize Israel. They are allies of Israel. Saudi Arabia and all the Gulf states are allies. Saudi Arabia might not have diplomatic relations with them.
Yes.
But across from North Africa, the exception only is Algeria because of its history. Egypt, all the Arab world, including Jordan, have accepted the hegemony of Israel as the master state in the Middle East. And therefore, something had to be done about Iran. And you know that the Prime Minister of Israel has been calling for the destruction of Iran for a very long time.
Yes.
It's actually the other way around. It's not Iran. You know, the propaganda is that Iran has been calling for the destruction of Israel. It's calling for the destruction of Israel because Israel has been calling for the destruction of Iran for a very long time, for 40 years now. So if we give the viewers a little bit of history, and I think it's very important that we have a conversation with the viewers and the people who are listening to us, is that Iran had a coup de grace in French, which means a finishing blow. They elected a prime minister in the 50s called Mossadegh.
Yes.
He was overthrown by the CIA. In fact, the Iranian regime right now thinks that the protests in Iran have been created by Mossad. Because in 1953, when Mossadegh was being overthrown, those protests were similar there that called for the end of Mossadegh. And the sin that Mossadegh had was he wanted to nationalize the oil company, in which 90% of the oil was going to BP and the Americans. This was their wealth, and someone else was taking it. And they said, we'd like to nationalize this wealth so that we can help our country. And that was a sin. He was overthrown. He was replaced by the Shah. The Shah, for 30 years, maybe more, over 20 years, had a massive repressive system in Iran that put the Iranian people under his boot. And there was a revolution, an organic revolution in Iran against that.
Yes.
I'm talking about facts. I'm not theorizing anything. This organic revolution was from the people. And they decided that they're going to have a political and economic and social system in their own image.
Yes.
You know, we in Kenya have refused. We want to wear bow ties and speak really heavily accented English and follow British canon law because we're Western oriented. They colonized us. We have not decided to have some kind of authenticity about who we are. So the Iranian Revolution, because of their long civilization, decided to do that. Now, the accusation is that they're not democratic, even though they have elections. They have oppositions.
Yes.
They decided to have a political and social system that reflects their faith, that reflects their history. And this is not allowable in the modern world. Someone who says we're independent of the hegemon.
Yes.
Now, that's one part. Now, the Americans have gone into the garage and scrummaged inside to find a concept to legitimize their strike with Israel to Iran. So they call them, clash of civilizations. That's one. So clash of civilization is made popular by some guy called Huntington, which says that history is described by us fighting. The civilizations just fight. There is someone else who replied to him who's called Edward Said, who said that that's a false narrative or a false discourse. The reason I'm saying there's a clash of civilizations is that the defense secretary of the United States said to the presidents of Latin America, that there were Judeo-Christian civilization, and they are fighting an Islamic civilization. So these are all lies, because right next to him standing there was the president or the prime minister of Guyana, who's a Muslim. The next one who was standing to him was the prime minister or president of Trinidad and Tobago. She's a Hindu. The president of, I think, Ecuador is a Lebanese Christian. Is an Arabic Christian. So if you look closely at what's happening, it shows you that something's wrong here. Lastly, the State Department said that at the speech in Munich by Mr. Rubio, he buttressed the same thing a week before they attacked the Islamic Republic. And he said that the same civilizational confrontation was there, and that we should be proud of it, and that colonialism was good. He said that. He said that all the things that European civilization did, just slavery, colonialism, and doing all these things that are morally reprehensible, was okay. And that we should not be, we should be proud of that fact, and we should not make apologies. He forgot to add that there were African Americans in the United States. This is a very important thing just on his home turf, who are not part of the Western European civilization.
Yes.
So African Americans, and the little matter of having President Obama as a president, was put aside for his own conveniences. So I've come to the conclusion after looking at the arguments of the United States. Forget Mr. Netanyahu, because we know what Mr. Netanyahu wants. He just wants to be the emperor of the Middle East. Mr. Trump and Mr. Marco Rubio have different interpretations. Mr. Rubio said that Israel was going to attack Iran, and therefore we had to attack it first.
Yes.
Okay, so you're going to attack him. So before you attack him, I'm going to attack him. So that doesn't make sense to anyone here, right?
Yeah.
And the president, it's just the truth. I'm not saying anything. They're the ones who said it. So the president said that, these guys were hoodlums, terrorists, and all these things. And there is no justification. Forget about international law, We have this thing called international law. That one has gone down the outhouse. So I put it to you that as Africans, as Africans, right now we have to be very careful, because this could happen to us.
Now, looking at it, as you say, it could happen to us. Looking at it from the current development, because you've drawn a very clear picture of the history and how it has come to be. And we have also seen other regimes being trumped in the name of being terrorist or oppressive. Gaddafi, Saddam, you could go on and on. We saw the war start in the Middle East, Afghanistan, which ended up, I don't know whether it has ended, but it was very catastrophic. It has remained to be so. And we have seen and heard comments like now it is the time for the Iranians to take back their country.
Yeah.
But the person saying that is the American.
Yeah.
The attack on Tehran happened in the middle of negotiations because they were meeting, I think
They're supposed to meet in
Oman,
Geneva,
in
yeah.
Geneva and all that to try and intervene, find a middle ground. Because at the end of the day, the hegemony you speak about is, in my opinion, imposed democracy or dictatorship, in other words. I think regions and countries have the autonomy to decide how they want to govern and manage their resources. But at the end of the day, we keep seeing intrusion. We saw Venezuela lose a president who is in detention by the same government, the US, that is purporting to export peace. So from where you stand, is it a crime for any state, for any region, to say that we want to be autonomous socially, politically, culturally, and even economically? And that within the global order that we are living in today, we should be allowed to prosper as such.
Well, I think we should be all careful. We should oppose racism in all its forms, and we should oppose anti-Semitism in all its forms.
Yes.
The Israelis also have to oppose racism in all its forms. We know that they, during the struggle for apartheid, to fight apartheid, the Israeli state, this is where we Africans come in. The Israeli state actively supported the Boer settler system in South Africa. And they opposed the freedom fighters. They actually helped South Africa build the nuclear weapons that the apartheid state had. The African Union has said that Israel has no part to play in the African Union because it refuses to change its system of thinking about Africa.
Yeah.
For an example, there was Ethiopian Jews who were taken under an operation here during the time of Mengistu Haile Mariam. They're second-class citizens.
Yes.
They are treated badly because they are black like you and me, or brown. Not only is that an issue, there is a social and political milieu of the Israeli social matrix, a discrimination between the Sephardim and the Ashkenazi, who happen to be second-class citizens. They were Europeanized. They were forced to take the culture of the European Sephardim, who come from Poland and Hungary and places like this. And you know that Mr. Netanyahu's last name is Milalowski, or something to that effect. So I think that it is very important for us in Africa to understand that the very idea of a hegemon in this Middle East region, and the Middle East is not very far from us, it's just around the corner here. Israelis with the United Arab Emirates helped destroy Sudan. It's just a fact. The countries that are tumbling down have had huge support from the Gulf states. Not only take Israel and say it's Israel is the problem.
Yes.
There are Arab Muslim states in the Middle East who want to return to the slavery that they practiced with us Africans here. It's Arabs who showed everybody what slavery was. You know that. We had to call them out for that. We just, the equal opportunity employer in criticism. The fine difference is after that happened, the integration in the Muslim community was absolutely different. But that doesn't take away the fact that slavery, if you go to Mombasa, there was a bell.
Yes.
Before you go to White Sands Hotel, there's a bell where they used to sail our people.
Yes.
We have to call that out. And I think that we have to start waking up to the fact that, our hip-hop governor here, the city was flooded, right?
Yeah.
Because they're stealing money here. He's not gone to school. I think he's a Form 4 guy. Nothing wrong with being a Form 4 guy if you do the job. There's a lot of Form 4 guys who have done a wonderful job.
Yeah.
But we have a hip-hop artist who's very wealthy, And we sank in the water of Nairobi. We were swimming to go to the house. 25 people died. Every place was a mess, especially in my constituency, this Langata that I'm standing for MP. And, this rottenness that is in African states and markets needs to be overthrown by the generation that is here now and the ones who are willing to commit to it, so that a new slavery and a new colonialism does not come to our doorstep. And the Middle East is eyeing us. They're looking at us. We as Kenyans, if we go to Abu Dhabi, if we go to Riyadh, or we go to Oman, we're treated very badly. We're treated very badly because you can see Nyoike or Omolo or Nyako, they go to work in these houses because our political leadership here could not produce jobs for us, and we have a very rich country. Because they're just stealing. They're just taking the money and they're stealing it. And the money they're stealing is just a blip. It's just a blip. But the money that's out there is just insane. Our economy is 300, whatever the budget is, billion.
I'm just wondering.
So I think the last point is, I think that the most fundamental thing is that Iran is standing up and saying, we are not going to be dictated to. We are not going to be told what to do, because we believe we are a sovereign people and a sovereign state. And I have a lot of respect and admiration for that. And I think that if we have that kind of spirit in our nations and states in our continent, I think we're going to go very far.
Kevin.
And I'm just wondering, because looking at the changing dynamics, there are winners, losers. Of course, it's a war, and there are those who will have to, blink fast. Ultimately, there's someone who is going to have to blink fast. But what is the rallying call for Africans? Because in some quarters, there is the thought around economic power, particularly around natural resources, with a very clear indication of uranium, etc. And that there are deposits, that are very clearly earmarked for certain interests. Now, those are producing collateral effects to certain areas like Africa. So you talk about cost of oil, etc., the conversations around, whether it goes up or it doesn't go down. Those are going to have effects. Politically, there are also concerns around who speaks first and what do you say. And I remember President William Ruto he was among the first, African presidents to speak. And there were those who are like, what you said, you should not have said, you should have waited. So what does this really mean for Africa?
I see your point. I think the president was wrong. He should have stayed out. I said this in another stage. Should have stayed out of their business. Completely stayed out of their business. But the president has been wrong on foreign policy from day one. When you concentrate power in your office at the State House and you micromanage everybody, when you make a mistake, the mistake is going to be huge. Because there's the best way to keep power, to make sure that power works, is to devolve it. To make sure that this minister and the ministers and all the other people do their work properly. President Kibaki was an expert at that. Just every day he walked into the office, he looked at what the amount of taxes that we had paid, and then he said, okay, we got this amount, now take this money, go build that road. That's how he worked. He was an economist. Our president micromanages everything. And then, he has this idea that he's some kind of messiah. So, the language of our president is really bizarre. He knows all the roads in this country. Do you know what it takes for you to do that? You have to get all the roads. You have to sit in front of a mirror and call out for a couple of hours every day. Barabara itapita hapo Njoro, itatokea hapo Meru, alafu itarudi hapo. It takes a lot of memorizing to do that. And you can see that the entire political class in our country now speaks like him. They animate himself. Fire see fire. Mambo see mambo. Even the fingers, they put their fingers up like this and they put like this. They're mimicking the president. And, there's a rebellion in this country from the Gen Zs. Mimi ndio Ahmed Hashi. Kwa mwingine anaitwa yeye anajiita pia anasema mimi naitwa Sifuna. People like us who reject want a transformed country. because it's not because we're militant, not because we're radical, but the context in which the country is in makes us say no. There's some people who say yes, and there's some people who say no. It's part of the social psychology of our society. I just happen to be the ones who say no. So as far as blinking on the issue of Iran, and which is the main subject here, is that I think that the Iranians are going to lose the battle, but they're going to win the war.
Okay.
You see, there's a fine difference there.
I think that's a good place to take a break on. They're going to lose the battle, that they're going to win the war. We take a short commercial break. We'll be back with much right here in Kenya's biggest conversation at exactly 33 minutes up to 9 a.m. Good morning.
Great.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. The weather with Spice FM. Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
So the Gulf countries and the Saudis have figured this out, that when push comes to shove, they're on their own. It's a fact. And I also believe that the strategic balance of power has shifted. I mean, Iran is going to be pummeled. They're going to do evil things. They killed 150 kids in a secondary school. It's a war crime.
Yeah.
I think that what is very clear for me is that there is a turning point in global history today. And that turning point is about how probably the most important economic center of world affairs is now absolutely upside down. You know that there's no way that they can protect the Straits of Hormuz. There's no way they can do that.
Yeah.
Because you just, even with a bazooka, hundreds of people with bazookas can cause trouble there. Forget about ships and missiles. Another thing is that the Iranians have not yet started using their latest kind of technology,
Ballistic missile,
missiles.
yeah.
They haven't. Another thing is that the Chinese are giving them satellite pictures of where these American installations are.
Yeah, there is
it's
a ship
not
that
public
is docked
information.
there, yeah.
But the Iranians don't have a satellite up there. The only people who have that are the Chinese, Americans, so on and so
And
forth.
Russians, yeah.
As well, I think the Russians this week now they've gone to the Security Council. They are also saying that they're not going to allow for this to happen in the Middle East. And I think sooner or later that the Chinese and the Russians are going to get involved.
Now, if you look at the global impact, because at the end of the day, there is no winner when it comes
There's
to
no
war.
winner here.
There's no winner at the end of the day. Years back, we had the Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Yes.
And weapons were detonated, and to date, we're still living with the ramifications of that.
Yes.
If it is true indeed that Iran is having nuclear weapons, and at some point they are detonated, I think I shudder to think what might happen. But if that were to happen, then should we, as a people of the world, be worried?
Yes,
To
we should
what
be very
extent?
worried. That's an excellent question. I just think that I don't think it's going to go that far. I really believe that. And the reason I believe that is because the Americans would stand to lose, and in a massive way. I think that the tactic to try and do regime change, you know what regime change is? It's they already did it in Iran before, People have to understand that.
Yeah.
They did that. And they're trying to do it again. They did it in Venezuela. Let's say, for an example, Mr. Ruto goes to China and cuts off all trade with the US. They'll do regime change here. That's just a fact. It's a fact.
Yeah.
So I think that we have to be very, very, very careful, because there is a unilateralism today in the world that's just astonishing. And I think that this Iran war, in my view, and very few people think this about, and I said this, I think I was in another station. I said the ultimate guy they're looking for first is China. And the other guy is Russia. The only two people who are left who can stand up together and stop and stand up to the United States are those two countries. And, China does not produce oil.
Yeah.
80% of its oil goes through the Straits of Hormuz.
Hamas, yes.
Do you know that the Second World War started on this issue of oil? The Japanese were under an embargo
Yes.
before they attacked Pearl Harbor. It is a war act for you to put someone on an embargo. It's like saying someone that we are not going to ship you food and you're going to die, and you have no right to respond. And I'm willing to buy it from you. So I think the ultimate aim of the American state is to reduce the power of China. The Prime Minister of Israel called China anti-Semitic. You know, there's this trope that everybody who doesn't agree with Israel is anti-Semitic. Do you know that?
Yes.
But you know, the whole world is now savvy to it. You can't have an idea called Zionism. You have your soldiers have a badge on their shoulder that the territory of Eretz Israel is all the way to Riyadh. I mean, it's like our soldiers here in Kenya wearing a badge that shows Mogadishu and Hargeisa are part of Kenya. You know, that's exactly what it is. And I think that that the people who are at the forefront of explaining and telling the world what is going on in the world are Jewish people who understand these concepts even more than we do, because they're culturally in tune. And the Jewish community and Judaism, you know, this is separate from the state of Israel and Zionism. There's two different things, you know. And we should never, ever confuse Judaism, a religion, and Jews with the state of Israel and its Zionist program. Because then we'll be falling into the trap of anti-Semitism and racism. And that is what has caused or slavery and colonialism, and that's what we ought to fight. So it is there's nothing wrong with criticizing Israel and saying that this thing is morally repugnant, without going into the tropes of making them look less human, because we in Africa have had that experience. So we're sensitive, you know. But their country now has turned, and their population, the Israelis have turned into supporting 2/3 of the Israelis support the war in Iran. They do. And yesterday there was protests from some segments of Israel were saying this war is illegal. The whole world said this war is illegal. Even the Europeans have said that this war is illegal. Our president, who said that he's with the UAE and with all the other countries, just doesn't know when to keep quiet.
But then again, Hashi, we find ourselves in a situation where we have two individuals who've decided to attack one country, right? And we find ourselves as if the entire world has, for a very long time, been silent. You know, you look at the African Union and its position, indifference. We don't want to get involved. We want to just stay on this side. You look at the bloc, the European Union as well, right? There are those who are calling out that war. But the world is seemingly silent when we see this. Is it because these two individuals control the world, or is it because many fear repercussions that would follow?
I think that's the latter is correct. I think Africa has to take sides. It has to take sides with the Palestinian people. It has to take sides with Iran. It has to, you know, there's sometimes that in very important political and economic turning points in history, you have to stand up and say, I disagree with this. We in Kenya, you know, are dilly-dallying with apartheid. You know that, right? While other countries in Africa were helping liberate that country. We have very strong relationships with Israel. They train our army. They train our intelligence. The other day, they gave us missiles. I don't know what for. And they have a very funny name. Spider missiles.
Yes.
I don't know who they're intended for. Iran is not interested in us at all. They're interested in our coffee. They're interested in our tea. And maybe after this war, they're going to look to some other country. Like Yoweri Museveni in Uganda, who said, make peace. He didn't say, I am with the UAE. Because he's going to sell coffee and tea to them after this. You know, there's this old song, matamshi yako rafiki hayakunipendeza, sikudhani kama unaweza kuyafanya haya. Sasa rais wetu ameharibu mambo.
How is it we find ourselves on the wrong side of
Rais
commentary?
wetu ameharibu mambo. Wakulima wetu hapo Mount Kenya na Rift Valley hata our tea and our coffee and the flowers and things like this that we're still transporting, we still don't have a proper economy, is going to cause a lot of economic hardship. And there's another time a long time ago that we goofed like this. When Kenya and Ethiopia and Somalia was fighting, for some reason or the other, Jomo Kenyatta or who was in charge of the country, Charles Njonjo, stopped a plane from Iran here in Jomo Kenyatta. People remember, I remember that as a young guy. I'm not very old, but I'm a young adult. And you know what? The vice president and the great foreign minister Munyo Oyaki, who opposed that, went all the way to England to talk to the Iranians and said, okay, we're going to release the plane. Can we have proper relations? I think that we shouldn't put our hand in a place where we're going to get stung because the entire political, economic issues of the days are being decided over there. And, our country, because we have refused to bring East Africa together, we have refused to go to industrialize, we have refused to do a lot of things that would help our country where we have bad leadership. At least, one of the things that we shouldn't do, there's 500,000 Kenyans who work in the Middle East.
Yes.
Quite
Did
a
you know
huge
that?
number.
500,000. Do you know how much money they're sending to Kenya?
remittance is very high.
Billions. Do you know there's a lot of kids who are going to miss their school fees?
True. Yeah.
A lot of people's rent is not going to go. There's a lot of people's food stuff is not going to be there. We ought to be very, very careful with the lives of the people of this country.
Look, could it be that we are under the finger of the Americans, such that our president cannot desist or resist from making a commentary that he knows goes to compromise our sovereignty as a country? Because you look at the war between Russia and Ukraine, we took a side.
Yeah, he did that.
We look at the war between Palestine and Israel, we took a side. I mean, we could go on, even in Congo here, we took a side. What do you think, how does this speak to us as a country diplomatically?
Well, I think that the president has no experience in foreign affairs. I mean, this is very clear for him to see. There are lots of people who have experience in but he just does his own thing. He even said it himself. I'm not saying something that is not said. He said, I micromanage because people are not doing their job.
I know.
You know why people are not doing their job? Because they're scared. Farouk Kibet could show up with his fimbo. He carries a fimbo now. Then there's a guy from Kapsaret. What do you call him? Sudi. Sudi might show up. I heard they wanted to slap the former vice president. Can you imagine that? Ulisikia hiyo maneno Gachagua akisema. So I think that this culture of fear by this UDA administration makes professional people in the foreign affairs and who are unable to say, like Ahmed Hashi, I'm a civilian, I'm outside, I'm fearless about my country, I believe in my country, I love my country. A lot of things have passed me by because of what I say. But, I think that patriots have to stand up for their country.
Yes.
And if we don't stand up, a lot of people died. A lot of people had trouble fighting for a new constitution that includes me. But, if we don't stand up for our country, tutakuwa wakimbizi. Na sisi hiyo hatutaki kabisa.
Actually, looking at the kind of very elaborate history that you gave us at the initial segment of this very interesting discussion, I'm just wondering whether what we are experiencing in the Middle East is a birth of a new regional order, or is it the beginning of a collapse of
very astute. I think that's a very astute question. It's the birth of a new regional order, and even a global order might come out of this. I think that we have in the American state a faction of the right wing and the evangelical movement that believes, that if they cause a war in the Middle East, that the second coming of Christ will happen in Jerusalem. There's people who believe this. Jesus Christ, probably the greatest human being to have ever lived. May peace be upon him. And he brought us faith that is not like any other faith. It's a peaceful faith. For people to use a faith like that, to say that the civilization or kaboom, so that, they're playing God. God knows what he will do with his prophets in good time. So, but I also think that there is, under the rhetoric of this evangelical movement and these conservative right-wing people, is the real economic and political relations that are under. President Trump said that the Chinese could come buy this oil from us from Venezuela. They're going to sell Chinese the oil from Venezuela, which is not theirs.
Yes.
Right? Yes. Isn't that imperialism? What other word do you have to describe that? It's just simple imperialism. And I think that this is not a wake-up call. As I said in the beginning, that we have to smell the coffee, that this could happen to us.
Yeah.
And we have to start thinking about how to bring our region together, how to be able to have something called a counter-hegemony within East Africa, within our African Union, within the global South, so that we can say, no, we in Kenya fought against the colonial system. My grandfather was in the Mau Mau, Mohammed Hassan Jebeli, Allah yarhamah. He was in the freedom fighter. My other grandfather, Ali Hashi, Allah yarhamah, was supported the movement. He couldn't sleep in his house for weeks because he had paid the surety for his nephew. I come from a family of people who believe in the independence of our country. Sure. And if we don't stand up for it, and if we don't put our uprightness up a bit and say, no, there are things we're willing to do, we're a government, we know that we're not very powerful, but we're not going to live under the boot of colonial oppression. We rejected it before, we should reject it now.
Hashi, Kenya finds itself in a very interesting place today. You know, the president has already taken his position, you know, and that continues to be discussed in international spaces. But here we are now, you talk about the Strait of Hormuz and the fear business that we talk about, and that will not only affect Kenya, but the entire global economy. You talk about China that depends on the Strait of Hormuz for its oil. And today, it does not know how it will operate because there is no business being transacted. Let's talk about this war and its effects to global economy and what that means for the kawaida mwananchi, not only in Kenya, but global citizens.
Everything is going to go up. Every price is going to go up. When the oil is 2-3 times the price that you bought it for,
yes,
that's going to affect the entire economy. You know how it's going to run into a recession. Trump is putting us, one of the things that he's scared about is that if this thing drags on, the U.S. will go into a recession. That's why he keeps saying it's going at a short-term pain, but long-time gain.
Yeah.
I think it's long-time pain and short-time missteps.
Yes.
And I think that it's just absolutely shocking, the kind of low level of thinking and analysis that the United States government, and particularly the three, the defense secretary, the state secretary, and the president, have been thinking about the Middle East. They have absolutely no idea about the history of this place. And I think that what they're doing is going to cause bedlam, and it is the role of the international community to stand up.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.